What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
And my name is Dave.
And this is the Deep Dive. It is good to be back, Dave.
It's been a minute.
I want to ask you a question. How does it feel? Because you kind of played my role on the podcast last 2 weeks, kind of setting the guest up a little bit.
It was fun. Yeah. It was a different role for me. Yeah. So we had fun with both Thomas and Heather, and so they were good interviews. And but I'm glad you're back.
Thank you.
Got the band back together today.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, today we're talking about your sermon for this past Sunday, called Generosity of the Heart. Really a focus in on what y'all would call, as those pastors call, that sermon.
Yeah.
But about tithing with your money and
stewardship and giving, generosity and stuff. A lot to unpack.
Yeah. There is a lot to unpack. So let's get into it. Well, Dave, I had a crazy weekend, just a good weekend. Got to go see my daughter sing the national anthem at the Braves game.
Oh, wow. That's big.
So Olivia was down there. It was cool. I kind of freaked her out, I think, going down, because I was like, Olivia, this might be the biggest crowd you're ever going to sing in front of.
Oh,
she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, there's going to be like 40,000 people in the stadium. She went,
don't be nervous.
Wait, what? But it was good.
Wow.
We had a great time.
Yeah, that's great.
A lot of family and friends.
Yeah, and I saw the movie Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, I saw that Thursday. You saw it
Sunday.
Yes,
Sunday afternoon. Yeah, yeah. It was great. It was awesome.
I loved it.
I think it really fit with the trilogy, and I guess it's the last one. Although they will have a spinoff.
Yeah,
that was pretty clear during the credits.
Yeah, you got to watch the post credits. If you go to Marvel movies and you don't watch the post credits, you're missing out. But yeah, I saw it too. And I told you this at lunch, but I think it's the best Marvel movies probably since Endgame. So, and there's a couple decent ones since then too. So pretty high acclaim.
Yeah. So you got the Nick and Dave deep dive endorsement of Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah.
Approved. Go see it.
Yeah.
Go see while it's in theaters. But it was a good time. And, well, let's jump into today, or let's jump into the sermon.
Yeah.
Let's kind of break it down.
Well, it is the first of a series called Generosity of the Heart. We're looking at different types of generosity as we try to grow in our discipleship and be more like Jesus in the way that we do things. And so next week we'll be talking about words and encouragement and kindness and all that, and then we're talking about service on the third week. But this week we did start with money. And tithing and stewardship and all of that. And it is one of those subjects that we tend to avoid. It's probably not the easiest to listen to, and it's one that, we preachers sometimes, don't look forward to preaching because we know that that money can be a sticky subject.
Yeah.
And so in thinking about yesterday's message, or Sunday's message as you're listening to this, you really can't talk about it apart from the drama. The drama was so crucial to setting the stage for that, and they did an excellent job. If you weren't there, watch it on streaming. Our drama team is fantastic. But basically, we kind of tried to fake everybody out into thinking I was doing a little something different in the sermon and going to ask people what they thought about giving. And so we had 6 plants. And a giveaway should be they were all mic'd up,
right?
But they came down and talked about it and kind of presented sort of a caricature of maybe a bad way of thinking about tithing our money, starting with Sarah, who was the first one, and she talked, about giving to get something, really, kind
of prosperity gospel stuff.
Absolutely, it's taking that verse, so you can't outgive God, or you give to and sort of, there's been, I'm just going to say some sort of abusive practices around that with people, the assumption that God wants you to be rich, and so the way that you get rich is giving money to the church, and so that the pastor can buy a jet or something. And so it started there, and then went.
Did you name your jet if you have it?
I don't know. The Nick Yothar jet.
Benson in the blue.
Yeah, something, I don't know. I just... never been a desire of mine.
Just joking.
But then, and it had some other characters as well, from the clueless giver to, the excuse giver, which is one that I think a lot of us can struggle with. It's like, if you're thinking about giving, there's always some reason why you can't give to the church. And whether it's just like crazy times, and we are living in crazy economic times, but it's usually we have money for the things that we really, all of our wants. And lots of times our shared responsibility as a community coming around and locking arms to do ministry together, and the responsibility that comes there. And so that was really, the kind of the focus of that one. And then one other that Rhonda played is the manipulative giver, and that is something that I've seen. Like Sarah's the sort of prosperity gospel thing. I really haven't seen that so much in churches that I've served. I certainly don't see that here, although it's out there and it's in the culture of evangelical Christianity in such a way that it does sort of filter over and bleed into us because you hear so much about it.
Right.
Thankfully, I think most in our congregation have much better theology than that. But the manipulative giver, people that are, it's a transactional thing with them. Yeah, I've got money and I'll give it to the church, but the church better do what I want to with it, in the ways that I want to do it. And I'll get that to, somehow or another, position somebody in a way or manipulate somebody in a way. And that is a struggle, and I just think the whole idea around transactional giving can be a struggle because almost every other part of our life, you go to the store, pay money, you go to the doctor, you pay a copay.
Right.
And so really, it's kind of natural for us to think of that in terms of our church giving. We pay money to get services. And it really, I think, is better when we begin to focus in that, we are trying as a community coming together to do the mission and vision of the church, to make disciples of Jesus Christ, to care for the poor and the needy, to provide programs and ministries that help you kind of underscore all of that.
Sure.
So that's kind of where we are. So what did you think of it, Nick, sitting down there?
I thought the one thing I was actually talking to Rachel yesterday about it is I thought the skit did a good job of kind of disarming the conversation a little bit.
Yeah.
Because
that was the intent.
It was caricature, so
it was funny.
Parts of it that kind of made you laugh, one of the lines that got me was when Rhonda was like, Benji likes him too. You know what I mean? Like there was just a few of those lines that you're like, oh, that's pretty clever. You know what I mean? So I thought it did a good job of that. And, you're right. I mean, money is not easy to talk about. And I think in some ways, a lot of us kind of have this like scarcity mentality of like, it's just going to go away so quick and I need to hold on to it while I have it or whatever. You know what I mean? Right. And I think it's hard sometimes to look at it as a tool that you can control. You kind of feel like everybody's grabbing it from your rent to your insurances. To all these little things. Like they grab it first, and you're like, well, what do I have left? I want to give to the church, and I want to, as I was sitting back and reflecting on it. We're so afraid of losing kind of that control, but in some ways, it kind of flips around and turns to just where you're like, you're giving to God, for one, out of what's happening around the church. You know what I mean? That, for me, I've got kids.
Yeah.
So investing in what's going to help them grow in the faith, but then also understand that this is part of a spiritual discipline to me, to understand I need to give, as a way of God's given me so much.
Man, you touched on three things there that we could probably spend the rest of the podcast talking about,
right?
Because they're all very important. First of all, this a scarcity mentality, a scarcity theology, which a lot of churches, a lot of Christian individuals can have. There's only so many resources, and there's not going to be any more. The other that you talked about was investment. I like that word, investing in the kingdom of God. And I think there's some great biblical stuff. And then the third thing you said, I can't hold a thought for three things, was, what was the third thing you were talking about?
The third part was just, well, now I'm losing it. What did I just say?
Yeah, that's okay. Maybe it'll come back as we go through. But let's talk about, the scarcity theology. And I know that our resources are, and like these are crazy economic times.
Yeah.
We were just, talking at lunch with a church member that was in there. It used to be, it seemed like a minute ago that you would go out to a lunch and you expect to pay $5 to $7 and you could get a lunch. A lot of places run lunch specials and that sort of things. And now they're almost, a great lunch special is $10.
Right.
And if you order on the menu, you're going to end up paying $15 or $16 off a lunch menu. And so it makes things like going out to eat, much more difficult. And just our grocery bills, what we used to pay for, groceries. I know our groceries are up, $200-$300 every time more than what they were even like a year ago.
Like 3 or 4.
Yeah. And so I know that, you only get paid so much. And so it does seem like there's fewer resources. And so I think that, it is though, what Jesus said in one of the scriptures that I use that, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And so we're talking about generosity of the heart. That's where, what are we going to really spend our money on? We're going to prioritize to spend our money on. And so, the work of the kingdom of God and the work that we're doing here together, I would hope is a priority for people that are involved here. And so in growing in our discipleship in faith, trying to grow, if we're not tithing, growing towards a tithe, to find those ways. The other thing I would say about that is, and I shared this on Sunday as well, I didn't always tithe. I didn't tithe as a young adult. I don't know if my parents tithed or not. A lot of people talk about they learned tithing from their parents. And my parents were good people and gave to the church, but that was never publicized and never was aware. So I wasn't brought up saying like, you pay yourself and you pay God. I've heard people say that, every time they get, whatever little job they had, they were told to, give a tenth to the church and put a tenth in savings. I wasn't taught that. I had to learn that as an adult. And so, I came up as a Christian young man, a Christian young adult, and then had the call to ministry, went into ministry. I mean, actually serving church. Actually, it was probably my second church before we really began to get that together. And there was also a lot of stuff. I was younger in my career, so it didn't make as much money. We had kids, so there were lots of expenses. And just the, first of all, idea of even tithing just seemed unimaginable. And the idea of having a budget seemed restricting. I was afraid to put it all down on paper and look at it and say, what is our budget? But what I found out was when I did that, it became freeing because I knew what I had to spend. And when I started, giving as I should to the church and tithing, then it's just like, say we never missed it. Yeah, sometimes we did. Sometimes it was tough, but we were always okay. We always made it.
And that's a good point about budget is like, to the start of doing a budget feels like you're trying to shove everything into a box and it feels like you're penalizing yourself or how you're spending or whatever. But actually, when me and Rachel, we sat down and we did our first one together, like we actually realized like how much more we had than we thought we did.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That, like if we kind of controlled a little spending here and there, it's like, oh, wow, we can actually do more than we thought we could.
That's right. When you start doing that, it's like, well, we really don't need that. We're wasting money there. Yeah. And so then, it is a way of really kind of prioritizing and being a good steward of the, and so this idea of stewardship is that, that God has given us all that we have. And so giving back to Him, to put Him first is our priority.
Yeah.
You've seen that. In fact, I think I've used it as an example in church before, the thing with the balls where you have a container and you have big balls and little balls.
Yeah.
And so if you put those...
your first sermon.
Right. And you put those big balls in first, then the little stuff can go in later. And so if we make giving to the church a priority and put that in there first, then all the other stuff just sort of seems to fall around in that.
That's in the...
Yeah.
You were talking, or you said earlier, when I wanted to ask a question around it, you were saying... that a lot of people learn tithing from their parents, and
Right.
and that idea of the 10%. Do you think, you've been in ministry for a while? Do you think the older generations have a better grasp of tithing than maybe the younger generations, or do you just feel like there's a difference economically now than there was back then? I'm just trying to figure out. There's a lot of articles that would suggest that all around, not just Hickory Flat, but like tithing in general is going down.
I think there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, I think the baby boomers, my generation, my parents' generation, actually let's go back to my parents' generation. The builder generation was very dedicated to institutions. And so they took care of those institutions. And I think it's become less so through the generations that have followed. That it's not, as important to people, take it or leave it, I don't like this church, I'll go down the street. They were committed to that sort of institutional thing. And there's good parts and bad parts to that. The other reason I think maybe, to some degree, there's been a lot of abuses. There has been money that has been misspent by churches and by other organizations. But let's just take churches, since that's where we're sitting. And so that has broken trust with people. They've seen some mishandling and overspending and, things like jets. But I mean, that's kind of a caricature, but it is a real thing. They've seen enormous salaries and, all sorts of abuses there. And so, if you're giving to an institution or you're giving to like a church, you want to be able to trust that group that they're going to be good stewards of those groups. So I think that also is part of it.
Yeah.
And I also think that, the new, I think that the generations, particularly like the millennial generations, I just don't think they're making as much money as fast as the previous generations. So I do think that there's a limitation on the funds that they have. My daughter, she's a nurse, and they make good money, but still the idea of being able to afford and buy a house, it just almost seems like an impossible thing for them.
Yeah.
It's with this generation where those kinds of dreams and those kinds of sort of goals seem to be more achievable for my generation. Fair or not fair, it's just kind of the way things are, but it's the reality we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to think about because, I know my peers and stuff like that, and there are some spaces where I can see like, yeah, we probably make up a lot of excuses on our side of the table, like, and that's just me being quite honest and frank. But also, like, we're charitable people when we need to be. Do you know what I mean? Like, as a whole, I think
people want to understand the why of giving, and I don't think that's always been there. And I think there maybe one of the eras of maybe previous generations was that set up those big falls and those big abuses was just blind trust and blind loyalty to the institution. And I think people are a lot more cynical and skeptical about that these days. And so that is, but the good news is, with where we are, as let's just take our congregation.
Yeah.
I think we have generous people. I think they need to be informed. And I think we've got the accountability and the things in place to help us make wise decisions with our money and how we spend things. And, we're struggling right now a little bit, but I don't think it's insurmountable. And I think we're going to, one thing, if you don't go through hard things, that's when we really grow together, is when, you have to trust God more than our own resources. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just that practice of putting our trust in God and making sure that as leadership and staff that we're saying, okay, God, lead us to where you want us to go. That's, if we take back all the things that we had to kind of run, how we wanted to or whatever.
I think people want to know that what they're giving is making a difference.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the why too.
Yeah.
So, we need to do a better job. We've talked about this of telling the stories, because I think it is making a difference. And I think, by realizing people need to know those stories, it helps us more accountable to, is what we're doing, how we're handling those resources, is it really bringing transformation? Is it changing the world for Jesus Christ? Is it making disciples?
Right.
Yeah.
So So maybe just a random question, this as I'm thinking through it and kind of processing this myself, what was the original, like the first people who tithed in the church, where did their money go? Like, what was it used for?
Are you talking about like with the priest, or are you talking about like the early church?
Early church.
Okay. So the early church, that's an excellent question to start with, because they didn't have youth ministers and church vans and church buildings, really.
Right.
So I think primarily it was used to support the needy, the widows, the orphans, those struggling in their in those communities of faith. It's a good question. I should do some more research on it, but I do know a lot of that happened.
Yeah.
I was just reading this morning, getting ready for this next sermon about Barnabas, and because Barnabas was such an encourager,
Right.
and with his words and how he was, but there's also this story about him selling a field and laying the proceeds at the apostles' feet to be used in the ministry. And here's the thing, what do they use the money for? Well, it's fuel for ministry.
Right.
Unfortunately, money, I think, is the best kind of insight. Is that it's fuel to do good things. In the words, you can use things for good and for evil, but
For sure.
but money and giving into the kingdom of God is use the word investment.
Yeah.
It is investing into the kingdom of God, and it does take things like our resources to do that.
And I think the vessel of ministry, like, it hasn't changed and it has changed, to a certain level where we can be so much more, I mean, even with this podcast, we can be so much more universal in getting our message out, where we don't have to sit on a donkey for 4 or 5 days to go to the next city to talk about things or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I wonder in some of these spaces, like you were talking about how it kind of funds the ministries and stuff like that, which is still what we're doing today. It just looks a little different than maybe it did originally.
Yeah. I do think there comes a point, though, where it becomes about funding for us, for our benefit.
Yes.
And we can take our eye off the ball of really, what are we doing for the poor? What are we doing for the needy? What are we doing that are bringing transformation to those that are broken out there, their lives? So, that is something to call attention to, that, how are we spending our money in such a way that is really impacting lives? And, hopefully a lot of what we do is in making disciples, and then it's our actions that are bringing about those kinds of transformations.
Right.
So, that's the idea anyway. Yeah.
That's cool. It's when you look at money as a resource to fuel ministry, that kind of gives you a why and a how, and I think you're right. I think in a space to where we could probably tell the stories of how the money is being used to fuel ministry here at this church and all around, because like you said, most of the stuff that makes the news is how the church has abused the money given to them as opposed to used it for good. You know what I mean? And I think we're going to be kind of fighting that uphill battle a little bit, but for our context and our space here at this church, telling those stories is important.
And I think those things, it can all work together.
Yeah.
I put up a slide at the end that actually my wife was a little surprised to put up, but I think it's important to look at. Yeah. And it was based on this idea that if you take what the household for poverty line is in our country today, which is around 20,000, I think it's like 20,500 or something. And if you just assumed that those people tithe, that budget would be bigger than our church budget is now. And so that's kind of a sobering thing to think about. But part of it's like, we can grow in our discipleship in ways that can fuel and invest in ministry, but it also helps us to prioritize our lives. We were talking about earlier that, when you sit down and make a budget, you often can find, well, I don't really need this. Do I need to go out to eat every lunch every day? Do I need to stop and buy the expensive coffee every day? I don't know why coffee gets picked up, because it's like $5 or $6, because that can be used somewhere else.
Yeah.
That can be used somewhere else to maybe fund, a great vacation rather than, kind of frittering it away through the year. You can have that sort of delayed gratification gratification to look forward to. But in the sense of like the kingdom, it can be used to give to the church. I mean, I'm not maybe not necessarily, the local church, but maybe also, support a missionary. We had a missionary here a couple of weeks ago, and lots of people sponsored children and stuff. And you can see sort of the why of how that the money that we have can really make a difference,
right,
in the world. And so, there are other ways in which we can spend our money in investment in the kingdom of God.
Yeah. I think when it comes to giving, we've been doing this, practicing the way study and talking about things just as a practice. And I think this is one of those disciplines too, is the idea of giving. And you said something kind of at the beginning that reminded me just, if you're somebody who is not tithing, like currently, don't try to jump to 10% right away.
Right.
Like start with, and maybe you'll disagree with me, but if it's start with 1% and see how it hits. And then once you start feeling comfortable with that, start jumping, like make your jumps as you can, and then find the space that you're like, okay, well, I can do this.
Yeah. I just don't think that's a realistic thing to do. It's like if you were going to, be saying you want to get in shape, and so you go out the first day and you run 10 miles, you'll never do it again. Right. And so, if you do something that's going to put yourself in financial, because you maybe have, a mortgage and a car payment or something like that, and suddenly, you put those in jeopardy. I mean, you really have got to figure out what is my budget and where can I start. But making those sort of decisions and taking those sort of small incremental steps in a day, I think that we all could do more.
Absolutely.
I think
that's part of the practice.
Yeah.
Is, find the spaces that you can and try to add that in. And then when it goes well, or when it's something that you find that you can do, then you go, okay, can I do more? You know what I mean? And I think those are the sustainable ways. But these are the practices of our faith as we grow closer to God, that like we want to do more of all these disciplines.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and guilt is such a horrible motivator. It does work, but it's horrible. I mean, I want people to see the fruits of this, that it will lead to a more abundant life. It should lead to a more abundant life.
Right.
And, to feel good about how we're spending our money, both, in our personal life, but also how we're giving our money. And so next week, as we continue in this generosity, because generosity is more than this money,
yes,
is being generous with our words, and talking about how we've also are stewards of this brain and these words that come out of our bodies, and how we encourage and affirm and uplift people and not break people down. And, that is powerful as a tool that money can be. Words can probably be even more so.
Absolutely.
As far as that. So
that'll be exciting to talk about.
Yeah, it will be. It'll be fun.
I'm an encourager, and I'm also a words of affirmation person. So like I feel loved when I receive these words of affirmation. So
yeah,
I think this will be something that'll hit me pretty hard.
It'll be good. It'll be something that it's also something I think we all can work on. And some of us do it more naturally than others.
Yeah.
But we're living in a time where there's a lot of hostile things that are being said, and a lot of unkind things that have been said that are just making matters worse. And it's a way to make the world a more kind and gentle place. So,
sure.
Yeah. So anyway, this has been good though. I've enjoyed this conversation. Glad to have you back.
Absolutely. Glad to be back. You're right. It's like riding a bike. I was telling Dave, I was like, I haven't been on it a month. I might be a little rusty, but it was good. It's good to be here. And thank you guys for being here as well. The consistent 150 that watch weekly, we appreciate it. And as always, if there's anything that you heard here that you'd like clarification on, or a question that prompted in your head as you heard us talking, or any other way that you want to contact us and let us know what's going on in your world, we have the deep dive at hickoryflats.org email. We've got the comment sections on both the YouTube and the Facebook that you can drop stuff in. Just let us know. We love to see those things. And Dave, you got anything else to add at last minute?
No, just have a great week, and we'll see you hopefully on Sunday.
All right. See you guys next time.
God bless.